Stewart. You sit. Yeah. Do you want to sit here as well? Standing.
Testing, testing. I think yes.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the first session of the Future Forum. We have 4 exciting sessions planned for you today, and we've got a really cool utility as well. If you scan the barcode down here, we have an AI-generated translation tool. So feel free to scan the barcode, and you can get our entire live conversation translated to you in real time. Today we'll be talking about longevity, and longevity might be one of the most exciting topics in health and wellness today, but in many ways it's still broken, and as an industry, we're still trying to figure it out. We have more wearables, diagnostics, more supplements, more recovery tools, more AI-generated insights than ever before, but consumers still don't have a clear, connected path towards better health span, better function, and better performance as they age. And this topic is especially relevant here in Europe. People over 65 represent more than 21% of the population, and that number is projected to be 29% by 2050. And by age 65, Europeans can now expect to live an additional 20 more years than before. But here's the thing, over half of those years are going to be lived in chronic disease and challenges. So the question for us today is no longer just about how do we extend lifespan, because we've done that, but also how do we extend health span. So today I'm going to explore 3 main topics. The first is what is broken, what is working, and what the industry could do to build something better next. I've got 3 panelists here for us today. However, you see 2 up because 1 is running late and will be joining us in about 10 minutes. So today, I'm going to let each panelist introduce themselves. Stewart, I'm going to start with you.
Thank you, Ma. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for coming. It's a very interesting topic for all of us, what we're going to discuss today. So I'm going to rather spend most of my time talking about the future and a very small piece of the time we have today on the past. I've been in the fitness industry for more than 30 years. And we've been an equipment business. We've built multiple boutique locations, gyms and boutique studios, and we've advised some of the largest global brands on their strategy moving from the analog world into the digital world, and also working with hotels around the future of fitness. So I want us to go exactly back to what Mo spoke about now when we talk about the age of what 65 looks like in the future. And I think for most of us that are at this event, and most of us that are in this industry, I think we actually are passionate about the fact that it's changing slightly. But I think if we're honest with ourselves, the industry is broken. And I mean, it's not a feeling I have. The stats and the data proves it. If you look at the data from the gym club world, or the gyms in globally, they lose nearly 4% a month of their members, which is outrageous. They lose half of their customers in 1 year. So we're not guessing this, are we? I mean, the reality of this is it's in the writing. And I think it's not broken because we have a sales problem. I don't think it's broken because we have a marketing problem. It's broken because we have a product problem. I think everybody is selling access. They're selling a membership to hard work. Majority of the population wakes up every day and they don't want to work out, because we're telling them, come to us, pay us, and it's going to be hard. So we've taken a slightly different view on this over the last 8 or 10 years. And we've spent most of our time looking at the end and working backwards, because people don't just want to work out, they're looking for an outcome. And how do we achieve that is by going to the end and saying, okay, so what is the outcome? Where do you want to be? And I think we can agree that somebody in their 40s who's focusing on their health and well-being, and this word longevity and wellness is different for everybody, but somebody focusing on that in their 40s is doing it so that they feel better than they do in their 40s in their 50s. And somebody in their 50s is doing it to feel better than they did in their 40s. And it's possible now. It's possible with science, it's possible with medicine, and it's possible with training. So if you push all that forward, someone in their 60s will be working hard to perform mentally sharp. It's not always about a vanity project. It's being mentally sharp, it's being strong and having the energy and to live a fulfilling life. So working backwards, what we've done is we've taken more of a scientific approach. And the science is not, for us, is not about more data. It's about what do you do with that data? And how do you serve it to your customer? And how do you serve it to the user in a format that they understand? And I think this is key because, we're not going to go down to the weeds on the pros and cons of wearables and why people should do them or why they shouldn't do it, because some people don't like it. Some people like tech, some people don't like tech. But at the end of the day, we like to see outcome and we like to see results. So we've taken a more result-oriented approach. And I think for us, moving forward and looking at what we're doing, we're consistently focusing on what does that outcome look like and how can we bridge the gap between science and how can we bridge the gap between medical and the end user. And one of the things that we do is we work with doctors, and the doctors onboard the member. They onboard the client. From there, it passes to your coach, and your coach works with the systems and the processes and has the tools in order to keep you engaged, to help you stay consistent, to reach your goals. Now, of course, there are multiple layers to this, but that's it in its simplest form. And what ends up happening is because we're able to work with the doctor, it gives the customer the confidence that what they're doing, they're not chopping and changing because they're constantly seeing results, but they see a 1% improvement. And that 1% improvement breeds success. Nothing succeeds like success.
Yeah, and I want to come back to that, Stewart, but Dean, I want to move to you. You are at the center of public-private partnership, working with a country, a city. Why don't you kick us off with an intro?
Sure. First of all, thanks for having us this morning. My KPI of today is to help fill up all the empty seats that we have here. So maybe the louder I speak, the more people can hear us and more can come to join our forum. For those of you who do not know where Singapore is, I'm happy to do a little bit of a national promotion here. And I will describe Singapore in terms of sport. From the east to the west, we are slightly longer than a full marathon distance. From the north to the south, we are slightly more than half the marathon distance. And if you're not careful enough, you may end up losing your way and you will end up in Malaysia. So that's how small we are. And we are very densely populated. We are 35 times denser than Cologne. That was what Google, or rather ChatGPT, told me last night. Now, why did I go at length to kind of describe where Singapore is and what Singapore is? From our standpoint, from Sport Singapore, I'm a sport administrator, a public sport administrator. So I work with partners in the corporates, in the industry sides, to help Singapore live better through sports. There are two reasons why we exist as an organization. The first, we want as many Singaporeans as possible to live better through sports. We look at national participation, and we are already doing not that bad. We have more than 75% of our population spending more than 150 minutes a week doing physical activities. So we are not doing that bad. Our second reason why we exist as an organization is we look at high performance. So on one hand, you have the everyday athletes. On the other hand, you have your elite athletes. Longevity athlete resonates with me. And I'm sure it resonates with all of us in today's conference. Why do I say that? Because we are not talking about taking sides anymore. We are not talking about whether you should be an everyday athlete or you should be an elite athlete. I think moving forward, we are always talking about the full spectrum. You set your personal best every single day. Today, if you decide to run a high rocks, like what Mo had done last evening, and a 5-kilometer run this morning, this is him setting his personal best. In the years ahead, from a sport administrator perspective, my key concern is this. How do I work with partners like Livewire? And when Hussain comes to join us, how do I work with partners like HuTech? And how do we make sure that every single citizen in Singapore will embrace the mindset of an athlete, which means you ought to be quite resilient, you ought to be quite disciplined. But I guess the challenge statement ahead then is it's not just about winning well. The citizen will have to live and play well at the same time.
Well, Dean, that's fantastic, and kind of goes back to what Phil Knight said decades ago, that if you have a body, you are an athlete. And I think the term athlete applies to anyone that can move. I want to go back to you for a minute and just get your perspective. The industry talks a lot about longevity. I mean, Stewart gave us a lot of insight into that, but there's still a gap between how we as an industry describe and talk about longevity. You even said you want everyone to be a longevity athlete versus the actual practical behavior and what people need to do to age well. What do you think that gap is? Why do you think we have that gap between what the industry talks about and the actual action in what people do?
As an aging athlete myself, I'm going to put on my reading glass, and I will read some stats from the World Health Organization just to help set the context. Now, in Singapore, our life expectancy at birth has improved by 5.34 years from 2000 to 2021, right? So just imagine we are adding more years to our life. We are living longer, quantitatively speaking. The next stat to look at would be the healthy life expectancy. In terms of that, our healthy life expectancy at birth has improved by 4.24 years from 2000 to 2021. Now, these numbers tells us many things. It tells us that on one hand, we are adding more years to our life quantitatively. On the other hand, we are not exactly adding quality to our life at the right pace yet. Now, in that argument, I would put forth to say that longevity might have been broken. If you look at all the wearables that we have today, you're wearing your watch, you're wearing your ring, you're wearing your banners, this and that, we know more about ourselves than many years as compared to many years before. Yet, at the same time, we are not seen as adding quality to our years.
Yeah, and Stewart, I want to move to you. You and I, working on our longevity, had a good walk yesterday, maybe a bit longer and warmer than what we expected. But one of the things that you told me about is how you're really focused on this particular space, on longevity, but really in the premium segment, right? Working for that 1%, that 0.5% of people who want to invest in it, and they'll almost spend anything that they need. But as an industry, where do you think we're falling short today?
I think it's this. I think it's the bridge between. I always default back to the analog world and the digital world. I believe that the technology that's being developed is so fragmented that the users are over bombarded with a lot of stats, even when they're working out. And I'm a firm believer in it. But you know, I obviously I have wearables, I track data. But there are some moments when you want to disconnect. And there are some moments, even when we go for a walk or you're doing a class or you're doing a run, you want to disconnect. But you still want to have that information stored on top of your memory bank. And I think that a large part of it is broken because there's so much investment, time and money spent in the top of the pyramid in the industry. So what the market sees above the water is the sharp top of an iceberg. What's below the water is all the systems and processes and technology that support it. So there's a lot of information coming in, but it's not being filtered for me to understand it better enough. I mean, we'll read our stats, we'll read our data, but we don't know what to do with it. And we don't know if it's pointing in the right direction. And, you know, the point that Dean's brought up around the aging population is potentially becoming a huge concern because people don't want to live a sedentary lifestyle. They don't want to live a lifestyle that when they're in their 70s and their 80s and they're aging, that they're not mentally sharp. And I think that the number one longevity tool or the number one well-being tool that we have is exercise. It's proven, the stats are there. No matter what you can, it's not the peptides, it's not your blood test, it's not the growth hormones, it's not testosterone, it's exercise. This is
how about sleep?
Number one. Hey?
How about sleep?
Well, sleep, good example. We've got all of these tools, and exercise is the one that from a mental stress point of view and a mental well-being point of view is the winner. So how do we get more people moving? And I think it's this friction point of when they do start moving, is start to show them some wins. And, you know, there's a very interesting study that's been done on thousands of individuals and thousands of athletes by Peter Lieberman, who wrote a beautiful book on the studies that he's done on some of the individuals in Africa and why they're healthy and why their longevity is there and why they stay active majority of their lives. And you know, one of the things that's come out of it is obviously dopamine plays a huge part when you exercise. So, Dean, when you exercise, you enjoy the feeling of dopamine afterwards, the rush that you have and the euphoria on the exercise. So that's your kick. But overweight people do not get that same kick. So they're working for not an instant result. They're working for the end goal. So how do we keep them in line on the end goal? How do we motivate them to stay in the end goal? When you go running, Mo, you love that feeling because afterwards you come back and you've had that dopamine kick. Otherwise, you can't start your day.
That's right.
So they don't get that. You know what they get? They get sore.
Yeah.
And then they've got to just walk, they've been told. Just walk 10,000 steps. 10,000 steps is up here for some people. And I think to close this gap, I think technology can play a huge part.
Well, Dean, you know, you started off your introduction by talking about KPIs and your KPI and filling the audience. I think that's worked a little bit. I can see that. You've improved that. As you think about a city-state like Singapore, which is such a wonderful and beautiful country, obviously you get to test things in a way that is very hard to do and candidly cannot be scaled even to a country like Germany or the US. But what are your KPIs that you look for? Because I always think about this. You know, I think about, even from an operator and a gym perspective, we typically track member check-ins, retention, what classes you're taking. But as you think about longevity, especially as you think about population health, what are some of those metrics that you're kind of looking to implement, and how do you kind of track improvement?
Maybe before I talk about the hard-nosed KPIs, I think it's important for us to realize that as a sport administrator, I think we always look at the 3 S's. How do we get people to start? How do we get people to sustain? And how do we get people to search? And if you think along these 3 things, it presents us with 3 very distinct areas of work that we need to focus on. And one of the key concerns that we have is always about the longevity gap across the different social economics groups. Now, the argument goes something like this. At the way that some of the wearables are priced these days, I think it's still at an entry level that not many people will be able to afford. So arguably, as technology and innovation democratizes and the price reduces, the data acquisition cost also reduces, I think we can potentially look towards an area where we'll be able to harness more and more data from the population. But that gives us another challenge, right? Because technically, if you're wearing your own wearable, the data belongs to you. Now, how do we get around this whole data protection? And if I don't get hold of the data, it means that I will not be able to understand where the population is heading towards their own physicality. So in terms of making policy decisions, that comes at a risk of me not able to fully understand the picture before I implement something. But you're right, Mo, because Singapore is small. I always joke that we are like a sandbox where we can fail quickly, and then we understand what goes wrong and what we can do to pivot along the way. And small come with its advantages as well, and disadvantages.
But I do want to touch a little bit deeper and unpack data and privacy. Obviously, because we struggle with this as an industry as well. Consumer data, in one hand, not that it's easy, but there's a lot of regulation, governance, and protection around how the data is stored for you in the cloud, how it's managed. You've got regulations like GDPR or CCPA in the US. But now when it goes to government, right, whether it's the United States, Germany, Singapore, the UAE, it's a whole nother level because now government's going to have access to your data. There's a lot of issues that can come from that. How do you view, how can governments and cities thoughtfully use data and give comfort to citizens knowing that because you're giving us the data, we're going to provide better services for you?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I'll give you one specific example of what Sport Singapore as an organization that we have been doing. We do a national sport participation survey on an annual basis, which means that we go out and ask Singaporeans, are you having enough basketball? Are you having enough tennis courts, or the hot topic of the year has to be, do you have enough pickleball courts or paddle ball or paddle to begin with? Now, by knowing all these data points, what we do is we don't keep it to ourselves. We publish it to.
Sorry.
Good morning.
Sorry, guys.
You can't just sneak in.
You must
I
be
know,
Hussain.
I know. I gotta say what's up.
I was just complaining
Sorry.
about Singapore. No.
Okay, good.
So I was saying, so when we have all this data, we don't just keep it to ourselves. We publish it to the public. And we invite innovators, we invite industry partners to take a look at all this data, to get the data and crack working on the problem statements. So to me, the beauty part is data is not meant to be held within.
That's right.
Data is meant to be shared, right? Obviously, we have to get through layers and layers of protection, but where the government is concerned, what we can do is to make sure that some of these survey data are being shared with the industry partners so that they can then innovate the solutions accordingly.
No, I really like that. I think for consumers too, it's about getting value, or for your citizens, it's about getting value in return for that exchange. Stewart, I want to move to you. You've really made a career around club design, both physical, also digital. You've had an innate ability to build experiences and connect with consumers. Now you're focused on designing longevity. In your mind, what would an ideal longevity experience look like?
We're not hypothesizing here, we're actually investing in it. And over the last 6 months, we've started investing heavily in a new project. And the concept is purely around hyper-customization. That's really where it starts. And it starts with the end goal in mind again, and working backwards by taking a facility which we will secure. But again, that's just the tip of the iceberg, and building systems beneath it, and partnering with multiple strategic partners who are leaders in their field. So for example, we're partnering with a company which specializes in, I want to say telemedicine, but basically a doctor-led program who's going to be the science-backed doctor-based. We're partnering with, we're building the technology. We're partnering with the equipment brands are building us hyper-customized product. And you'll see some of our product on the stands. For example, Primal has some of our equipment on their stand, down to the color. Because the customers that come to an experience that spend $15,000 a month on a membership, they don't want to walk into a facility that feels the same that they're used to going to. So just the change in total direction. Everything has totally changed the direction. But this experience is starting with, they're only in your business 1% of their life, 1% of their day. They're in your brick and mortar. But 99% of the time, then they're not with you. So how do you stay connected? We start off by picking them up in a car. So we send a luxury car to bring them to the location. That whole journey is perfectly curated from the beginning till the end. We have a wellness concierge. When I travel and I arrive in the US and then I extend my trip to the UK, I just message the concierge and my peptides arrive at the hotel, easily the following day. That's what future of premium longevity looks like for us.
And I love that, but there's still, that's a massive gap, right, between, I would say, the 0.5%, and Dean, what you're focused on is really the everyone else. Hussain, welcome to the panel.
Thank you.
You are a strategic advisor to Ultrahuman. I've got my Ultrahuman ring on here. It really guided me during this trip to FIBO. So the first couple of days, it was saying that my temperature was elevated, my scores were down, my sleep was suffering, and that changed how I kind of treated myself. I adjusted my workouts, I went easier on the 10K, pushed on the high rocks, used the 5K today as a recovery. I drank more. I try to go to bed at a reasonable hour. So it does change how it influences daily behavior. The question that I want to ask, for you is, and you and I have talked about this for many years, but from a longevity perspective, this ring or an Oura ring or a Whoop just gives us so many data points. And if you were to pick a couple that people should focus on for longevity, what do you think those should be?
Yeah, so I think that's a great question. Thanks for having me. Sorry I was late. HRV is obviously the metric that a lot of people would answer here in terms of, the most evidence that's been scientifically backed in terms of recovery, in terms of fitness levels, in terms of longevity as well. I think fitness is a key metric that's somewhat pretty well correlated to longevity as well. I like to talk about a few different metrics as well, including what we call an ultra-human HR drop, which is basically how long your heart takes to stabilize during your sleep to its resting baseline, right? So the one thing of why actually rings such as ours at ultra-human and others have got popular is especially because they're very comfortable to sleep with, and most people don't or forget to sleep with a smartwatch because they obviously need to charge it, and so the resting heart rate metric most people are getting from their smartwatch is in fact not really their real resting heart rate if they're not sleeping with it, because resting heart rate is the average of the minimas when your body is fully at rest. And HR drop is basically how long your body takes to actually reach that minima during the course of the night, and that is shown to be a key metric for recovery. So things that can affect that would be like if you had a really hard, late workout, or if you had a late night meal, especially alcohol. If you had, late night alcohol, and everybody's body is different. So some people, might be able to have a glass or two of wine before they go to bed and still reach, a resting heart rate pretty quickly and recover perfectly. Other people, even maybe like a few sips would actually affect that, right? So it's very interesting to see how personalized that metric varies for everybody, because it's one of the most actionable. You can literally figure out, okay, until what's the latest time I can have a meal, or how many drinks I can have, or how late can I work out if you like to do a late night workout before going to bed without it affecting your sleep. The second metric I would mention is circadian alignment, or circadian clock, which is actually a function of temperature. So unlike Whoop and Aura and most of the wearables, at Ultrahuman, the ring measures temperature continuously. So where Whoop and Aura only give you day-to-day variations. So we actually give you your full body clock, and whether you're aligned with your circadian phase or not. And based on that, we tell you things like, what's your optimal caffeine window, right? Until how late can you be drinking caffeine, coffee, or other stimulants, and which stimulants, it also depends. Everybody's body reacts differently to different stimulants, so it doesn't affect your sleep in a negative way. So I would say those are two pretty actionable insights. And then, of course, beyond the ring, something that Ultrahuman, we're known for, and how the company started, is the integration of continuous glucose monitors. And maybe you're going to ask more questions about that. But CGM has been a part of our platform before we even launched the ring, and seeing how different foods actually affect your sleep. So correlating insights between glucose, sleep, and recovery is something we were actually the first company to ever do. So seeing, oh, my sleep was poor because I had these nocturnal hypoglycemic episodes that actually, triggered periods of light sleep, and that's why my recovery is poor today. So I would like to go probably in those orders, like HRV, obviously everybody will answer that. HR drop, how late your heart dropped. Temperature minima during sleep, which determines a circadian clock, and glucose, continuous glucose.
This topic and what you talked about is something that we as an industry hear a lot. And ABC Fitness, which is the booth right to my right over here, we power 40,000 gym locations, 45 million members, and our recent surveys have shown that members want to know more about longevity than anything else, which then have led a lot of clubs and operators, which is primarily this audience here, to think about things like, how do we start offering that? How do we start, obviously, Stewart, clubs like yours are going to be the exception, but they're not the 40,000, right? So how do they become a conduit towards longevity? Is it adding rings or other wearables to the portfolio? But Dean, I want to start with you first. Given where and the role that you sit within Singapore, do you think health clubs could be the front door to longevity, or do you think it has to be more specific centers that you have to develop?
You asked a very important question, and I was smiling just now when Hussain was talking about the effects of drinking have with different people. I'm smiling because I was reading this article by this Blue Zone, which talks about 5 o'clock is a great time to drink, and apparently if you start to drink at 5 o'clock, studies have shown that you will become happier, and happier will become healthier. Anyway,
guys, that's the biggest takeaway of all of FIBO.
I digress.
You could start drinking at 5 o'clock and you will be happier.
Let me go back to your question. Now, Sport Singapore is a government agency. we have not increased our gym admission fees for 30, 40 years. Currently, it costs about €1 for any Singaporean to get into our gym. And I would say the quality of our gyms are not that bad, are not the greatest, they are not that worse off as well. It is a public gym, right? Now, as we think about the aging population, we also think about how the consumers are getting a lot more demanding these days. We are not just going to stop at having one treadmill, two treadmills, and then we say this is a gym. The orientation that we are now having is to see how do I turn a sports center into a human optimization lab. 3 big words, but it starts with a narrative. We do not want Singaporeans just to get into a gym and hop onto a cardio and say, look, I'm working out. Because cardio may not be the best workout for you at this point of time. It could be strength and conditioning. It could be so much more. So let's start to take a look at our public gyms as human optimization lab, where information gets fed into them. Unfortunately, from a government perspective, I can't give all my citizens a ring and a band and a watch. But what I could do is to make sure that some of these research findings are made open and public to all of them so they can make some informed decisions at the end of the day. It still goes back to my key concern that I mentioned about earlier. The last thing that any government administrator wants to see is to witness the longevity gap widening across socio-economic groups. I can't afford to have the rich ones having all the rings and the data and making decisions, but the poor are just left behind this game. My focus, my intervention will have to make sure that I cater to this group of people as well. Now, whether it is to wear a ring, whether it is to wear a watch, I think those are the secondary accessories that we can think about. But most importantly is to put information in their hands and getting them to work out the right way that it should be worked out. As I said, it's not just about cardio, it's not just about strength and conditioning, it's always an arsenal of activities that at the end of the day will support the ambition of a longevity athlete.
How do you, so you definitely have provided access, and I'm very familiar with what Singapore has done in terms of their gyms. How do you get them in the gym? Because that's the hardest part.
We are already getting quite good numbers going to the gym, but I know where the question is coming from.
Because here's the thing, the gym could be free.
Precisely. And someone who is already a convert will keep on going in. So then the question is, how do I get someone who has never been to a gym to get into the gym? I think that's a tough question for any sport administrators. I will give you one example. A couple of years back, we were trying to experiment. How do I get the elderlies to get into the gym? So we said, look, if you can come to the gym, there's barbells, there's dumbbells, there's cardio machines, and so on and so forth. But they may find all this equipment very daunting, and they say, no, I'm not going to get in. So we sort of play around with words. We call one of our senior gyms, we call it Gym Tonic.
Gym tonic.
Gym Tonic, as a play of the word to gin tonic. So
Yeah.
we say this is a
Another
gin
drinking
tonic. So this is a way to start a conversation, to say, look, it can be fun, you know. This is a gym tonic that we have customized for the elderlies. And that helps to bring certain narratives going. And you'll be surprised, right? It's
And the
not
sessions are at 5 p.m.?
That's right. Now, it's not just about the full play of technology and innovation. Sometimes it's just a change in the way we carry that conversation with the segment that we want to work on.
Stewart, I've spent most of my career, say most of my 25 years working on removing friction from the consumer experience, because I feel like if you want to get people to do things, having phrases like gym tonic, right, will remove that friction, remove the barrier to entry. In longevity, you see this world of biohackers. I mean, during the pandemic, people like Peter Thiel, Andrew Huberman, Dave Asprey have built massive followings. Wearables have started to put more data towards that. Now science is catching up. But what do you think, yet, when you talked about your experience, you talked about the color of the equipment, which I can really relate to. What's more important to get more people to follow a protocol? Is it the science? Do you think it's the data? Or do you think it's just the experience?
From my perspective and our experience over the years, it's only been about the customer experience.
Right.
That's it. And it's not a It's not a sessions problem. There's no need to change sessions and be more creative, whether it's color or sessions. It's a systems problem. And it's breaking down that friction. It's making it fun. It's making it accessible. And the intimidation factor is still very high. Even though more people are talking about it and wellness, longevity, exercise is becoming more evident and more important, and governments are also supporting it, the intimidation is still huge. And I just want to draw back to a study that was done recently. They did a study on who uses digital fitness apps, and straight away we'd all default to Gen Z. We'd say, okay, well, they're the biggest users of fitness apps. But I was wrong when I looked at the study, because actually 55 years older and older, 13% of us are using digital apps to work out with. The second tier was millennials at 12%, and Gen Z was the lowest at 11%. And then you can be like, that doesn't make sense. But when I give the explanation is intimidation. A 55-year-old doesn't want to go to a 21-year-old to ask for help. I'm just giving an example. Or to look silly going to try and figure out how to use a machine, or how to do a workout, or how to even find the clips, or how to do the adjustment. Whereas the app guides you nicely. Okay, so that's the first part about the system. The second part about the system is when somebody leaves your business, and this is just one basic retention tool, is ask them, why did they leave? So already half your people are leaving. Find out why are half of them leaving in the gym world. And yes, they're obviously also focused on longevity and feeling better, but just ask them the basics. Why did they exit your business? And they will tell you so much. And if you start seeing a repeat habit, but between the third and the fourth person, then stop and you'll realize it's a product problem. It's possibly the way that your personal trainers are onboarding them using technical terms. It could be a whole host of things. And I think in Singapore, I think the biggest thing is you talk to your community. I mean, I've been to many of the clubs there, and you're very humble in the explanation, but I've been to some of the most amazing clubs I've ever been to in Singapore. It just blew my mind how they could take a gym on the 45th floor and turn it into this most incredible experience. But you know, there's people working out in the parks, there's paths that you've created, there's cycle paths, there's rules around it. It's a very good example of how to introduce the non-user. And I think this is the word. It's about the non-users who are into tennis, but are not into going to gym, or enjoy walking, but don't go to gym because now they need strength, because they're reaching a certain age and walking is not enough. And I hope that answers.
Yeah, no, it absolutely does. And by the way, Singapore is one of the most incredible countries in the world and places to visit. Hussain, coming to you, there's a lot of hype around longevity. If you go to Hall 6 and Hall 7, if you haven't had a chance to go, you'll see things from cry beds, red light therapy, tons of recovery, and a lot of equipment brands are creating two things. I see one in Pilates, their own Pilates line, and the second, which I would also maybe add, is a result of the movement towards longevity. But second is adding their own recovery tools. You see a lot of recovery things out there. What do you think is the most hyped recovery or longevity therapy that we're seeing out there?
That's a good question. I don't know if I have a definite answer for you on that, but maybe what I'll start with is sort of on one of the points that you were making, Stewart, just now about people preferring app guidance to actually going and asking for help for an individual, and like the over reliance on like an app or what the app will tell you might be the best recovery for you, and whether that's do it yourself kind of plan, whether that's going into the gym, going into the sauna, going into using red light therapy, or actually reaching out to some kind of coach or clinician, right? So I think you should separate interventions into those two specific buckets, and it's not even about like AI versus not AI. We absolutely, I think, we'll all agree on this panel that data, without interpretation is just noise, right? And providing data with no clinical context or actionable next step is, maybe why longevity, the name of this panel is longevity is already broken. And many platforms just give users, just scores with none of that clinical, context. So I think it depends on the individual, but you need to be able to create an experience where you have the choice to either use the AI doctor in the app right? And get tailored exercises in the app, or reach out to a clinician. So as an example, we have an AI doctor in our app called Jade. It's a biointelligent data. You can query it just like you're used to querying ChatGPT. Ask it about your data, ask it to interpret it, ask it to advise. But you can also reach out to, we have a module that's a pocket doctor that's basically an integrated, vertically integrated telehealth service where you can actually speak to a doctor, an actual doctor, right, and get prescribed insomnia medicine, get prescribed GLP-1s. We then give you a GLP-1 journey in the app that shows you, based on whatever dosage you're having, if your body's responding well to it, because you need to give somebody a closed loop system on that. And of course, GLP-1s are super hyped now in the longevity space, but more and more even in the gym space. I think the fitness and longevity communities are converging on these weight loss drugs, but people have no actual idea how their own bodies are reacting. And then the last example I'll give maybe is specifically, we've partnered with a group called Agentis Longevity. They're a group of 30 longevity clinics rapidly expanding throughout the US, where they actually have customized our app experience for their members. So most of the members will actually discover our products as part of a bundle that they'll buy in the lab. Of course, today it's super premium. In the future, I think we're hoping to create studies together that will allow outcomes to enable products such as ours to be reimbursed, so we could be able to reach different segments of the population. I know you were talking about access in Singapore, and I'd love to talk to you more about how you guys are thinking about insurance, and I know we talk about this all the time. So ultimately, I think you need to drive a customer to intervention in both ways. Either a do-it-yourself way and let them experiment. I think it's fine that there's like two full halls full of different kinds of longevity, treatments. You mentioned like Dave Asprey and a lot of and biohackers Peter Attia that I think started even talking about the space by talking about results from studies that were pure experimentation, right? So I actually think ultimately experimentation hype, so to speak, is overall a net positive, but you need to pair it with measurement. Right? And I think paired with measurement, everybody can discover for themselves what actually works for them, as well as decide for themselves if they want to, be nudged. And our app, of course, will nudge users with their data as much as possible, but towards an intervention that's do it yourself, or that's reaching out to an actual coach or a clinician, whether that's through telemedicine or going into actual clinics like our partnership with Agentis, and how they actually provide all their members a personalized longevity quotient that's monitored by an actual clinical team that looks at their data.
Well, thank you, Hussain. We are almost at time, but I want to open it up to the floor for any questions for our panelists. Rachel, 1 second. Yeah, no. Go ahead. Oh.
Hi.
That's better. Everybody can see you. Hi, this is a question for you. Do you have segment data on which types of users respond best to each type of intervention you were just describing? For example, the example of older folks responding well to a gin and tonic branded facility. What types of users respond best to the different segments of interaction described by your product?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I would say even we do obviously have that data, look at different demographics, age, gender. Speaking about the gender maybe segmentation for a bit, because I think this audience will be interested, we've seen a really high growth in amongst women on our platform for multiple reasons. It turns out, continuous temperature is a really key metric. I was mentioning that when I answered the question about metrics for looking at women's health. That includes fertility tracking. That includes, we have a cycle and ovulation feature, but we also have now acquired a company last year in the UK that was a medical company actually that they had vaginal temperature sensors, and we ported that to work on the Ring to interpret irregular cycles, screen for PCOS, endometriosis, and ovulation, and give like personalized coaching to people that to women in regards to their fitness and their health. And I think actually since that acquisition, we've seen 65% growth our user base grew to 65% women, which is very interesting. We also noticed that women tend to actually go deeper on our platform in terms of interpreting their own data. So that's something very clearly we've seen. I think it kind of makes sense as like women typically being, the person that takes care of the health in the household and like worries about the family to be looking like really deeply at like data. So that's something we've seen already. With regards to age, I can't think of any specific segmentation yet. Of course, we started in the sort of I think 25 to 45 is our sweet spot age range. We started I think probably in the 25 to 35, skewing towards 35. Given the price point accessibility on our platform and the just general like biohacker audience, but slowly we've actually shifted towards broader health and wellness from the where just like Whoop, you could argue has shifted from being a fitness tracker to now trying to reposition and define itself as a health tracker. So yeah, absolutely. The answer is yes. We absolutely have that data, and we're in the process of segmenting it and doing multiple studies.
Okay, we have time for one more question.
Hi, Stewart. This one is for you. So you talked about the cycle of onboarding the clients through the doctor, then handing him over to the coach. You mentioned the concierge concept, and I'm wondering, how did you solve the problem of the information about the customer traveling in between all of these pit stops on one hand? How do you hand him over from one stop to the other, so from the doctor to the coach to the concierge? And how do you keep the track of what's happening when he's not actually sitting in front of one of these pit stops?
Okay, thank you. First of all, the doctor is not in person. The doctor is online. The specialty of the doctor has always been online, and the community, because there's specialists around the world for certain things. So the lead doctor will appoint a specialist for that customer. And I also want to reiterate that this is a very high-touch program. It is not a volume play. As we improve our systems and processes, we will find the solution, and we're building the software to help it become a volume play. So then the pyramid will come down where the price point is here, it will then be able to come down. And to cross the first bridge, it's particularly handled majority from the doctor, and we have a head of product within the business. So in most businesses, they'll have, let's say, a fitness director. Ours is a head of product because we're all about the product. And then they will then work with the doctor to appoint a personal trainer. The personal trainer has regular contact with the client 3 to 4 times a week. They also have an app which they connect to every day. They upload their workouts through the connectivity. They upload their nutrition through the app. So all of this is processed, and the reports are all brought together with AI. So it already takes out a huge amount of work just in the summaries. The summary is what the personal trainer sees, passes it to the doctor. From them, if it needs to go deeper, they will go deeper. There's one other very clear metric, is when the client doesn't show up. That's already where we start to notice things start to slide a little bit. Possibly they're traveling. So when they're traveling, what we do is we give them a personal trainer in New York. So they're ready, we close this gap. They get off the plane, they're in New York, they're there for 5 days. We don't let them miss the Wednesday workout, but they don't know where to go. We find out where they're staying, and we do a deal with a gym close to there, and we pay the personal trainer at that gym to do the workout for them. The personal trainer has already spoken to their personal trainer in Dubai and knows it's a leg day and knows that I've got knee problems, and they take it over. So it's still very high touch. All the tech does is help us gather the data so that it can go into the AI, and the doctor and their personal coach and head of product can review it and make sure they're staying on track. Does that help answer your question? Thank you.
Well, I would say in closing that we spoke a lot about both larger population health addressing longevity, but a lot of the innovation still happens in the premium segment, and that is not unlike what we see in a lot of other industries. If you look at fashion and design, a lot of the innovation in colors, in styles happens in the premium segment before you then find it down at department stores a few years later. Same with cars. Think about companies like Tesla that came out with the Roadster for over $200,000 in 2008. Now they're focused on a low-cost EV, and I think the same thing is happening in longevity as well. Well, I want to thank our panelists for joining our session here on longevity. And also thank you to FIBO, Vincenzo. Thank you so much for having us as well. I hope you enjoy the rest of FIBO.
Can we get a photo?
Sure.
Yeah, we should.